Hello there, Pastor Stewart here with another midweek Bible study video. So we've been reading through some selected Psalms in the book of Psalms the past few weeks. And if you are just joining us for the first time today, then you don't need to stop and watch from the beginning. You can just keep on finishing this video. We'll be reading Psalm 53 today. And if you're just jumping in for the first time, then when this video is done, you can go back to the beginning and watch some of the other videos we've done in the book of Psalms. Every psalm is a different mood and a different purpose and a different kind of reason for writing. So we've enjoyed looking at different ones each week. And they are all ones that are quoted in the New Testament. So they must have resonated with the earliest Christians. So tonight, like I said, we'll be reading Psalm 53. And we've seen a lot of different moods that different psalms can have. Some obviously are joyful and celebrating and praising and happy. Some are sad and hurting and scared. This one, if I were to pick a word to describe the mood of this psalm, I would say disappointed, because the psalmist has looked over the land and it doesn't look good. He or she does not like what they see, and they long for things to get better. One thing that's interesting about Psalm 53 is that it is basically repeated almost word for word in Psalm 14. And we saw how last week, the one we read last week, is repeated like in a shorter version in another psalm. This one is basically repeated just 100%, just with not quite exact, like a few minor variations with a few words, and we'll cover some of those as we go through. And when it is reprinted in Psalm 14, it doesn't have the full inscription as it does here. So here, the inscription before verse 1 even starts, it says, "For the director of music, according to Mahalath, a maskil of David." And we've talked about this a few times. A lot of different psalms will have those kind of Hebrew labels of different types that have some kind of meaning musically, or maybe the genre or the key or the mood or something. And Bible scholars aren't really sure exactly what they mean. But in Psalm 14, it doesn't say that it's according to Mahalath or that it is a maskil. So maybe Psalm 53 and 14, it's like the same words to a different tune or something. We do that in our hymnal. If you take our hymnal and you look up Praise God from whom all blessings flow, you'll see that there are two different tunes that you can sing those words to. They're similar tunes, but they're different. So maybe that was it. Maybe for different kind of moments or moods in worship, they had different tunes or musical direction for the director of music to take note of and to use it appropriately. So let's jump in and read verse 1, Psalm 53. "The fool says in his heart, 'There is no God.' They are corrupt, and their ways are vile. There is no one who does good." Okay, notice that it doesn't say a fool says with his mouth, "There is no God," but a fool says in his heart, "There is no God." And that difference is the key. Someone who says with their mouth that they don't believe in God or a God or anything, we would call that person a traditional atheist who makes that claim of belief with their mouth. But this isn't someone who says it with their mouth. In fact, the person that this psalm is talking about, this kind of person, they might even say with their mouth that they believe in God, even though it's not true, even though it's a lie, just to get into the good graces of people who do. But in their heart, they really don't. Maybe they might say that they do with their mouths just to kind of schmooze over people and make some good business connections, but in their heart, they do not. So if in your heart you don't believe that there is a God, there is a higher power, a creator, a Holy Spirit creating force in the universe, then what might that mean for a person's life? What difference would it make? Well, then they would just do whatever they want. There's no Lord of creation. There's no higher power. So I don't have to care about what I do. I don't have to care about other people. I don't have to care about you and you and you. I can just do whatever I want, whatever I feel like, whatever is good for me, because why not? There's no God watching out. There's no creator, no divine Lord or anything. So why not just indulge and do whatever you want? That's the kind of foolishness that it's talking about here. And the Hebrew word for fool that it uses in verse 1 is the Hebrew word nabal. And that kind of fool, it doesn't mean someone who's dumb or stupid or silly, not that kind of foolish. It means someone in Hebrew here who lacks morals and does not practice ethical behavior. That's the kind of fool. Someone who lives selfishly, only following their own desires, someone who acts maybe on incorrect assumptions about life and the world because they're assuming there's no God, higher power out there. That's the kind of fool here who doesn't understand the big picture of what's really going on in the world and in life and in humanity. And unfortunately, the Bible shows us that a Nabal kind of fool can still be wealthy and still have a prominent place in society. If you're interested after this video, you can go back and read 1 Samuel chapter 25, and it tells the story of a man named Nabal. And indeed, as the story shows, he is quite foolish. He was a very rich man, but he treated people poorly. And it says there in 1 Samuel 25 that he was mean and he was dishonest in his business dealings. He was wicked and didn't listen to anyone. So when he is selfish and ungrateful with David, that's when he gets into some big trouble and suffers some bad consequences. So if you're interested in reading kind of a fleshed out example of what an Old Testament kind of fool looks like and acts like, you can go back and read 1 Samuel 25, and I'll put that reference in the video description below. So that's what we're talking about, the kind of stubborn fool who thinks it doesn't matter how they behave because there's no God watching over them, nothing that connects them with other people, so why even care about other people? They have no problems with being corrupt or immoral because there's no higher power, there's no God, so what does it matter? Okay, let's keep reading and see how it plays out as that kind of corruption spreads around. So verses 2 and 3. God looks down from heaven on the sons of men to see if there are any who understand, any who seek God. But everyone is turned away. They have together become corrupt. There is no one who does good, not even one. So it sounds like the psalmist has looked around his country and is really sad at the state of affairs that he sees and how people are acting, how they're treating each other or mistreating each other. So he says that when God looks around at all the land looking for anybody who understands, God doesn't find any, because the psalmist says they've all become corrupt and selfish. Everyone has turned away. There is no one who does good, not even one, it says. And it's that phrase that's quoted in the New Testament. It's Romans chapter 12, Romans chapter 3, verse 10. That's where the Apostle Paul starts quoting from this psalm. And in his discussion there, Romans chapter 3, verse 10, he's talking about how every person, all of us, none of us perfect. We've all made mistakes. We're all sinners. So there's no reason to pretend that we're not. No pretending we're perfect, because none of us are. We're all sinners. And Paul says that even if you know everything that's in the Bible, like all the Old Testament laws, it doesn't mean that you can't still act a fool. You might know all the right answers to say in Sunday school or interviews or something, but that's things you say with your mouth. And this psalm is talking about in your heart and your spirit. Let's read verses 4 and 5. Will the evildoers never learn? Those who devour my people as men eat bread and who do not call on God. There they were, overwhelmed with dread where there was nothing to dread. God scattered the bones of those who attacked you. You put them to shame, for God despised them. So if a person continues moving away from God, then they will become more consumed, more worried, more paranoid, irrational, and overwhelmed as their morals continue to fade and they lose their sense of what's right and what's wrong, what's good behavior, what's bad behavior. They will exploit and take advantage of people as men eat bread. Those kind of folks will, the psalm says, devour people and just take all their money or steal from them or exploit them. Or, that makes me think like a modern day application might be like payday lending loans that have interest rates that are so high, they are oppressively high. And those type of businesses, they prey on people who are in an emergency, in a bind, something that's going wrong. And these people, they might need to just get a loan to take care of an emergency. And the payday lenders pretend like it's a good, safe loan to get, but then the interest rate is so high that the person is just trapped and is bogged down in debt for years and years. It just eats them up. That's kind of what it makes me think of people who devour others as men who eat bread, just kind of take all their resources. And if you are living that kind of way, making that kind of sad progression, then you won't know, like I said, what's right and wrong. You won't know how to handle things in the world the best way. Like verse 5 says, the foolish will be paranoid. They will get afraid, even when they don't need to be. They'll be too overly sensitive and freak out. They won't be able to handle problems or criticisms or doubts or even questioning. That they can't take it because they just have there's no foundation of belief. So there's nothing to keep them grounded. It's because God's presence, the peace and comfort of that holy divine knowledge just isn't there. That connection isn't there. It's not in them. God's presence is what gives us assurance and strength, even during uncertain times, even during hard times. We have that firm foundation, even when the rest of life is shaking us. And it might be, for us, it's going to be hard and scary and uncomfortable and sad or painful. But we have that foundation in God. So as hard as it is, we can stay firm and stay strong and not give in to bad behavior that harms others. When you don't have that kind of heavenly perspective, even the littlest things will set you off and you'll freak out and you will lash out and try to blame others, take it out on others, get from others, devour, take things from others. That's the kind of progression of foolishness that this psalm is laying out. And here's one little difference between Psalm 53 and Psalm 14. Let me flip to Psalm 14 and we'll compare. Like I said, most of it is kind of word for word the same, but Psalm 53 verse 5 says, there they were, overwhelmed with dread, where there was nothing to dread. God scattered the bones of those who attacked you. You put them to shame, for God despised them. Let's see how Psalm 14 phrases it. There they are, overwhelmed with dread, for God is present in the company of the righteous. You evildoers frustrate the plans of the poor, but the Lord is their refuge. So interesting, in this kind of alternate version of this psalm, it brings in the poor and equates them with the righteous, that God is on their side and God is the refuge of the poor. And these, the foolish people are trying to take advantage of them. take advantage of like the easy prey of the poor. And again, that reminds me of like the payday lending companies, which really prey on folks in a tight bind financially. Okay, let's read the last verse. Oh, that salvation for Israel would come out of Zion. When God restores the fortunes of his people, let Jacob rejoice and Israel be glad. So the psalmist really wants his people to wake up, realize how selfish they've been, so that they can turn and they can save themselves. That from within Zion, there in Israel, that they can realize, how bad and ignorant and hurtful that they have been. Regardless, the psalmist is looking forward to the day, eventually someday, when God will restore them and they can all celebrate. So this week, let this psalm inspire you to not act like a fool. An Old Testament kind of fool is what we're talking about. So don't live as if there is no God and mistreat others, not care about how you love and how you show compassion. But instead, every time that you care for someone, help someone, show love and compassion to someone in need, you are honoring and proclaiming God's existence. That is true wisdom right there. So, to end our Psalm Bible study today, every week as we read a different Psalm, I want it to inspire us to sing a little bit, since the Psalms were like the Old Testament hymn book. So I thought it'd be good to sing from the hymn, How Firm a Foundation, because if we can have that sort of grounded sense of who we are in relation to life and creation and God's creating spirit, then that will help us stand strong and not be foolish and not mistreat others. So here's stanza 2 of How Firm a Foundation. Fear not, I am with thee, O be not dismayed, for I am thy God, and will still give thee aid. I'll strengthen thee, help thee, and cause thee to stand, upheld by my righteous omnipotent hand. I hope you can stand strong in your firm foundation this week. So don't stop singing and don't stop praying, and always be honest. Take care.